Hi, my name's Sue Cooper. I'm an artist and art tutor based in West Sussex in the UK. And today we are doing day 4 of my oil challenge. So this time round, instead of working from a photo, I've decided to work from a grandmaster, none other than Van Gogh himself. So I chose this chair because it's one of his more simple still lifes that he's done. Thought it would be an excellent practice for getting things like the shapes right. And chairs are very hard to do because of the number of complicated shapes. And people will be thinking about drawing the back of the chair, the seat of the chair, the legs. But it's not those things that you need to really pay close attention to. It's the space around the chair that you need to pay attention to get things in the right place. So have a look at the gaps that the chair leaves behind. So like the space in between the legs, the space in between those wooden bits at the back. Think about angles, think about shapes. Don't think about, I'm going to draw a chair leg, I'm going to draw a chair seat, because otherwise you'll come a cropper with that. So concentrate on the negative shapes always. To colour this in, I used a bit of lemon yellow, a bit of yellow ochre, a bit of titanium white in various different blends. I blend very much on the paper. I say paper, it's actually Dale Rowney Georgian art board. And where it goes a little bit darker, I mixed it in with a little bit of the cerulean blue. And just blending it a little bit there on the page itself. I can see there, looking at it from this space, that I needed to have put the chair leg out on the right hand side, out a little bit at a slightly different angle. But those are the kinds of things that you should be looking at. These the chair legs make quite some interesting different like triangles. If you've made any mistakes, like there, I decided that I wanted to make the back of the chair a little bit smaller, and you can easily wipe off marks with a cloth. And when you're painting, try and go in the general direction of what you're painting. So the wooden, the seat there has a sort of a rattan kind of style weaved surface. So I was trying to emulate that just with the movements of my brush. Now for the background, I use a bit of cerulean blue, a bit of ultramarine, mainly cerulean blue here. I think I added a touch of yellow as well to give it that sort of a more of a turquoise look. Try and use the biggest brushes that you can get away with, so that it takes less time, but also it stops you being too fiddly. It does get a little bit lighter the further down you go on this down that wall. And Van Gogh used a very kind of choppy approach. He wasn't after smooth finishes, so we can be as choppy as we want. You can see there I'm using quite short, sharp brush strokes to get a bit of texture into the background. Can you see the difference between the ultramarine there? The ultramarine does give it a bit more of a warmer glow. I realised at this point that I'd forgotten some of the chair legs, so I went back to add some of the chair legs. And whilst I had that same sort of yellow ochre titanium white mix on my brush, I just sketched out the tiles. The tiles were quite interesting. In fact, this whole painting was a little bit interesting because none of it seemed quite like it was in perspective. So I have a relatively limited palette that I'm working with. So these colours, I couldn't quite capture all of them, and I was more interested in getting the tone spot on. values rather, not the colours. So I just tried to use whatever colours I had on the page. So if I needed to go quite dark, then I would use a sort of maybe an alizarin crimson and an ultramarine to get it quite dark and black. Again, I was quite chop and changey with the brush, not really mixing on the palette so much. As soon as you add white, it does go on nicely, but it does sort of deaden the colour a little bit, so that's something to bear in mind. So if you're using a limited palette like I was, then don't worry too much about whether your colours are spot on or not. It's more important that the values match and that eventually your chair will stand out. It's really interesting looking at this sort of tiled floor. You can sort of imagine how this sort of terracotta tiled floor has all of these different colours in. And I did try and have it lighter at the back. He's used quite an interesting device that a lot of artists use by going sort of darker in the foreground to give it that sense of foreground and background and things receding. So I was just getting on to do that box. I think he's got Vincent on the box. I decided that I would embellish it with Sue instead. So here I'm using a rigger brush and it's loaded up with a mix of alizarin crimson and ultramarine, I believe. And that's to make it as dark as I possibly can. So I do have black, but I tend to try and avoid it if I can, because I think if you can go dark, including another colour, then it can add a little bit more depth and more interest to your piece. So where there was a more bluier line, then I would have had a little bit more blue in there, a bit of cerulean maybe, if it was a lighter blue, bit of ultramarine. So that's not the same outline all the way through. Now I do have the full real-time tutorial over on my Patreon page. I would love it if you could join me there. I am trying to grow this channel and I'm trying to grow my Patreon channel. There are free options to join on Patreon where you'll get my updates, and there are various freebie tutorials as well that I'm putting up there all the time. I also have an Art Challenger tier membership, which is £10 a month, and for that you get 2 Zoom calls where we'll go through a portrait together and I'll check your work as we go. It's quite an interactive, nice session. And there's also a creative coffee morning as well, so you can bring your own project to that. Maybe you want to follow along with one of these tutorials. Over on Patreon as well, you'll be able to find a step-by-step PDF instruction sheet for this as well. So I'm just embellishing the final details, things like adding the top of the box there. Just adding some outlines to the struts. Just a little bit of paint in between the tiles because it's not completely blank white. There's a sort of a creamy tone. So spend as long as you want on these paintings. If you don't have a lot of time, remember you don't have to spend a lot of time. We're learning from this. The goal isn't to produce masterpieces that are going to be hanging on the wall. These are learning exercises so that we've got everything that we need to have in the bag to create our own masterpieces later. Just darkening up that foreground leg a little bit there. Van Gogh used outlines quite a lot to differentiate some of the forms in his work. So it's quite interesting playing with the rigger line. So you can use a rigger and then soften those lines up a little bit with a sable brush, just adding some embellishments on the wall there. And I think I'm going to call that a day. It's been a fun practice, fun with the rigger brush, and yes, hope you've had fun too. Thanks very much for watching this video and joining me on my oil challenge. Any comments that you have would be greatly appreciated, and if you could like and subscribe, that would also be very much appreciated as I grow this channel. I'll see you at the next one.